Hey everyone, Adam here's the Wizard Podcast. Today we're going to dive into a comic book, an independent comic called Black Cloak. It is created by Kelly Thompson, Meredith McClaren, and Becca Carey. Now, I got to check out the second issue of Black Cloak, so I was a little bit lost in the story, but don't take that to mean that the story's not well written or it's the story's fault. Obviously, jumping in the second issue of something is not usually the best place, and I was able to put the pieces together as I was reading it to figure out, get a pretty good idea of what was going on. Black Cloak is a series. It's set in a fantasy world where it has some of the familiar things, of course, elves, fairies, that kind of thing is mentioned, is seen, but it's a very unique world. This is not a copy of anything. The story's protagonist is a near-human fantasy creature. They are Dracona, is what they're called. In the context of the story, I guess that's something that they don't exactly want to advertise to the wider world, and it also means that they're at least partially immortal. Our hero character here is waking up in the morgue, talking to her friend who works there, covering up the fact that she died. How is she not dead? So you're introduced to the fantasy elements straight away, and you get a little bit of backstory on the characters, what's going on, what they're getting into, and it seems like there's new discoveries even for the main character on things that are going on within this fantasy realm. Regarding the character herself. Obviously, there's things going on in the world that she doesn't know. We're given a little bit of backstory between the main character and it looked like her husband or possibly fiance, which was a good bit of history. I don't know how much of it was covered in the first issue. I imagine not rehashing the same story, but it was able to fill in some blanks for me onto some of the motivations this character has, as the weirdness of starting with a character who's waking up from having been killed, going into a backstory about, love and kind of love lost, and then getting into the main story, which appears to be a police or detective type story set in a fantasy world. That part I found interesting because the fantasy is normal. It's not a big discovery every panel. It's a lived in existing world where the characters don't feel the need to comment on every fantastical element, which I always like. I think that's the best way to do world building, is just kind of thrust the reader or the viewer in, and, it's kind of sink or swim. You keep up or you don't. The big standout to me in this book was the artwork. It's a very original, unique style. It's simple in all the best ways, but not plain. The use of color, the use of fading out the thresholds on the lines. It's not just thick black lines everywhere. The depth, and they use just a little bit of digital enhancements, I guess you could say, for some of the futuristic technology like see-through screens or fairy wings at a point. The lighting effects are outstanding. I actually spent a lot of time re-looking at panels just to see how they captured lighting effects, in low lighting situations where there's light hitting part of a character's face, or if they had a magical or technology object that was lighting up the scene in some way. I thought they did a really good job on. I'm not sure how the talent breaks down into who did writing, coloring, inking, lettering, all the different jobs, but just, credit to the whole team as a whole, because it all really blends together. And I did just mention the lettering, which I also think is cool, especially because when the main character is waking up, the lettering's a little bit different to when they're kind of with it and together. There's a lot of space left in the panel for the bubbles. There's a lot of space within the bubbles to see the text. It's all very clear, very concise, and minimalist in a design choice style kind of way, not meant as a knock at all, which I really appreciate that aspect of it. As far as the story goes, detective fantasy we've seen before. I've seen it done really well. It's hard to say how into the story I was in this one, being that I only read one issue and it was the second issue, not even the first. So I'm intrigued to see what the world is. There's something a few pages from the end that the character obtains a magical item that can open up the world even further. So that is very intriguing. So I would say that the writing's on point. The art is phenomenal. And if you're looking for another fantasy series, another detective series in a fantasy realm, this one's probably right up your alley. The comic is called Black Cloak. The first issue is available now. The second issue is coming very soon. Kelly Thompson, Meredith McClaren, Becca Carey. Very cool book. Very well done. the art alone is worth at least checking out an issue for, because it is outstanding. It really is its own unique thing that will grab you, and they've done a lot of cool stuff with the effects in the artwork. Thanks for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe. We got a lot more of these comic reviews, screener reviews, interviews, unboxings, all the stuff you love coming your way. You're not going to want to miss out. Speaking of not wanting to miss out, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week, wherever you get your podcasts. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. We love hearing feedback, so drop some in the comments. Leave us something on social media. All the accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have our own comedy comic series. It's called Social Studies. It follows a group of friends through high school, dealing with all the heights of every emotion that there possibly is. We write it like a sitcom and do it in the style of the 90s cartoons that we grew up on, love, and inspired us. Issue 10 just came out this month. Issue 11 is coming out next month. Issue 12 the month after that. Now's a great time to jump on board because there's a lot of big things coming your way. Check it out at socialstudiescomic.com, on Global Comics or Comixology. Thanks.